I was standing in front of the mirror in the church room, adjusting my veil for the 10th time on that sunny Saturday morning, the 23rd of September, at 2:45 in the afternoon, with exactly 15 minutes left before the ceremony began, when my father walked through the door with an expression that I had never seen on his face in my entire life of 32 years. It wasn't just worry or nervousness of a father handing his daughter over at the altar. It was pure and absolute terror. His eyes were wide as if he'd seen a ghost. His breathing quickened, irregular, panting, his hands shaking visibly as he closed the door behind him and turned the key in the lock with a click that echoed in the tense silence that immediately settled in that room, decorated with white and lilac flowers. I felt my stomach turn completely, because I had known that man since I was born. It was 58 years of his life being my rock, my safe haven, my example of a decent and honest man, and never, at any time in my entire existence, had I seen my father in fear. True, he was always the strong one, the protector, the one who solved problems instead of despairing about them. But at that moment, he was terrified in a way that chilled me to the bone, even with the heat of September in the middle of Rio de Janeiro, where the temperature was 32 degrees Celsius. He approached me with quick and firm steps. He held my shoulders too tightly, his fingers digging into the delicate lace of the dress that cost 8,500 reis, and that took 6 months to complete exactly like I dreamed, custom-made by the most renowned seamstress in the city, Ms. Marlene, who was 68 years old and had 43 years of experience. The dress was a mermaid style with a 2.5-meter train, long lace sleeves, a heart-shaped back neckline, 1,800 pearls sewn by hand. It was the most beautiful piece I had ever worn in my life, and it would also be the outfit I would wear in the worst experience of my existence. My father looked deep into my eyes and said in a deep voice, hoarse, urgent, full of despair, that he was trying to control. Gabriela, listen very carefully to what I'm going to tell you, and don't question, don't scream, don't cry, don't panic, just obey, exactly as I'm telling you. After the ceremony, after the priest says that you are husband and wife, after the kiss he's going to give you at the altar, you're going to get into that white convertible car that's parked on the left side of the church. The engine will be running, the keys in ignition, a tank full of gas. You're going to step on the accelerator with all your might, and you're going to run away from here. You're going to leave this church, this town if possible, and you're not going to look back. No matter what happens, no matter who shouts your name, who cries, who tries to stop you, you run away and drive to the police station in the neighboring town, which is 42 kilometers from here on the main highway. I stood completely paralyzed, looking at him as if he were speaking in an incomprehensible foreign language, my brain refusing to process the absurd words I had just heard. I thought maybe it was a joke extremely inappropriate last minute, or that he had suddenly gone crazy, or that I was having a hallucination induced by pre-wedding stress. Dad, what are you talking about? This doesn't make any sense. The ceremony starts in 15 minutes. There are 237 guests outside waiting. Diego is waiting for me at the altar right now. The party is prepared in the room next door with you. Dinner for everyone that cost 38,000 reais. Honeymoon booked in Cancun with tickets bought 4 months ago. What do you mean by running away? Running away from what? Running away from who? Hey, but he squeezed my shoulders even tighter, so hard that he was going to leave a mark. And his voice came out even more desperate, more urgent, almost breaking. Diego is not who you think he is. He is not the man you met, that you dated, that you agreed to marry. I discovered something this morning, something terrible, something that I should have discovered months ago when you introduced him to me for the first time at that Sunday lunch a year ago and 4 months. But I trusted. I thought that you had finally found a good man after so much suffering with previous relationships. After that broken engagement 5 years ago that left you depressed for 8 months, I thought that this time was different, that he was special, and I was wrong, terribly wrong, dangerously wrong. His name is not Diego Henrique Carvalho, as his identity says. That is not his real name. It is a false name, a professionally forged identity. His real name is Daniel Rodrigo Cortez, and he is a killer, wanted. Throughout the country, he killed 3 women in the last 7 years, all of them. All of them his girlfriends or fiancées, all of them young between the ages of 28 and 35, all of them in love and trust. All of them killed in a brutal and planned way weeks or months after the wedding. And you would have been his fourth victim if I hadn't turned on the television at the right time today. The whole world spun violently around me. The walls of the room seemed to move. The floor seemed to tilt. My legs gave out completely, and I would have collapsed on the floor like a rag doll if my father hadn't been there for me. Holding it tightly, I felt my mouth go instantly dry, as if I had eaten sand. My heart raced in my chest with such force and speed that it felt like it was going to literally explode out of my ribcage. Irregular and painful beats. Cold sweat ran down my entire spine, even with the air conditioning in the room turned up to maximum. My breath caught in my throat. I couldn't get any air right. I was starting to hyperventilate. This can't be happening. It can't be true. You're wrong. You confused it with someone else. Diego is architect, works in the office on Central Avenue. I met his partners. I met his secretary. I went to his office 15 times. He can't be a murderer. He couldn't have killed anyone. He's kind, affectionate, attentive. He treats me well. He never raised his voice at me. He was never aggressive. He never showed violence. This is insane. You're crazy. It can't be true. And my father interrupted me, taking from the inside pocket of his dark gray tuxedo jacket that he had rented for 900 rays a yellowish envelope and crumpled. He took out a sheet of bond paper printed in black and white and unfolded it in front of me with hands still shaking. It was a federal police wanted poster, the kind you see in American films or in reports about dangerous criminals, with a frontal photo and profile photo, physical data, description of crimes, and the face in the photos was unmistakably, unquestionably, that of the man who was waiting for me at the altar, less than 50 meters away from that room, dark brown hair, honey eyes, gold, the same characteristic dimple on his chin, the same small but visible scar on his left eyebrow that he always said was from a childhood bicycle accident when he was 9 years old. But in the photo, he had a short beard and shorter hair and a different hairstyle. He must have been about 5 or 6 years old in that photo, based on how he looked slightly younger. Underneath the photos he had written in large red letters, Daniel Rodrigo Cortez, 37 years old, wanted for qualified homicide in 3 different cases in the states of Rio Grande do Sul, Paraná, and the Federal District, considered extremely dangerous and manipulative, has document forgery skills, uses multiple identities, specializes in gaining victims' trust, reward of 50,000 Rs for information that leads directly to capture, contact federal police urgently if seen. I began to shake all over, not just my hands, but my entire body in uncontrolled convulsions. My legs really gave way this time, completely without strength, and my father held me by the arms, placing me on the upholstered stool of the white Provençal hairdresser, my head spinning in nauseating circles, stomach turning, nausea rising in my throat, the taste of bile in my mouth. How did you find out about this? Where did you get this paper? When was this? How do you know it's him? It could be someone else similar. It could be a coincidence. Please, Dad, tell me you're wrong. And he knelt down in front of me, still holding my hands which were cold as ice despite the heat, and began to explain in a more controlled but still tense voice. This morning, at 6 exactly 12 hours and 12 minutes, I was in the kitchen drinking coffee, as I have done every day for 30 years. I had woken up early because I was nervous about the wedding, anxious but happy, thinking about how my only daughter was finally going to be happy. I had turned on the television to the local news channel. I was half paying attention while preparing buttered toast when a special program about unsolved crimes in Brazil came on, a series of investigative reports that the channel was doing, and at 6:15, a segment started about a serial killer that the police had been looking for years. The presenter, I said, "Today we're going to talk about Daniel Cortez, known in police circles as the bride killer, a predator who conquers successful women, marries them, and kills them." Weeks later, to keep their assets, I was going to change the channel because I thought it was a heavy subject for my daughter's wedding morning. But then his photo appeared on the screen, a large photo taking up half the television, and I completely froze with the cup of coffee halfway to my mouth because I recognized it immediately, instantly. Even with the different beard and hair in the photo, some features are impossible to disguise. The specific scar, the dimple exactly in that place, the peculiar shape of the face, the distance between the eyes. I let the cup fall to the floor where it broke into 6 pieces. I didn't even care. I continued watching the television in absolute shock while the presenter narrated the 3 documented cases, showed photos of the 3 victims, all young and beautiful women, all professionally successful, all killed under suspicious circumstances shortly after getting married. The first victim was called Camila Rodriguez. She was 28 years old, a dentist with her own practice in Porto Alegre. She married him in March 7 years ago. She was found drowned in the bathtub 22 days later. The second was Patricia Mendez, 31 years old, architect in Curitiba, married in January 4 years ago. She fell from the 12th floor balcony a month and a half later during an alleged domestic accident. The third was Amanda Silva, 29 years old, doctor dermatologist in Brasilia, married 2 years ago, died of an overdose of prescription drugs 2 months after the wedding. In all 3 cases, he received substantial inheritances, generous life insurance, and disappeared completely right after the funerals. Changed his name, changed city, changed identity, started the whole hunting process again with a new victim. I couldn't breathe properly. I was literally panting, hyperventilating, my hands squeezing his with desperate strength, nails digging into his skin. Dad, this can't be happening to me. Not to me. I love him. I trusted him completely. I gave my heart, my body, my life, my apartment. Has his name on it now. He has keys to everything, access to my accounts. We're getting married today, starting a life together, having children that we plan to have in a year, buying a bigger house in 2 years, growing old together. How could he be a murderer? How could I not see anything? How I was so stupid, so blind, so stupid. And my father's voice came out firmly, trying to anchor myself in the reality that was collapsing. You weren't an idiot. You were the victim of a professional predator, of a psychopath trained in manipulation. He is an expert in this. He has done this at least 3 times that we know of, probably more times that were never connected to him. He chose you because you are exactly his type, the perfect profile, successful woman, 32 years old, criminal lawyer with her own office in the city center, paid-off apartment of 120 square meters in the most valued neighborhood, valued at 700,000 Rs, imported car, model year, worth 110,000, savings of 250,000 Rs in financial investments, robust life insurance of 500,000 Rs that you increased 6 months ago when you started living together, without a large family because your mother died of cancer 3 years ago and you only have me as a close relative, perfect, isolated victim with substantial wealth. He studied you probably for months before getting closer. He knew where you went, which places you frequented, your habits, your routines. He orchestrated that meeting at the cafe. It wasn't a coincidence. It wasn't romantic destiny. It was a planned hunt. He approached you methodically. He conquered you systematically, and now you're less than 15 minutes away from getting permanent legal access to everything you've built in 10 years of hard work. And after that, in a few weeks or months, you're going to have a domestic accident. You're going to fall down the stairs of that 2-story apartment. You're going to crash your car on a dangerous curve with mysteriously failing brakes. You're going to take an overdose of anxiolytics that he's going to say you took because you were depressed, and he's going to disappear with everything while crying convincingly at your funeral and receiving condolences from people who will never suspect the truth. Before continuing with the rest of this absolutely real and terrifying story, I need whoever is listening to me now to understand the extreme gravity of what was happening at that moment. If you are following this narrative, leave a like right now because what comes next will show exactly how I survived the day that should have been the happiest of my life, but almost literally became the last. Comment from which city or country you are watching because I need to know that I'm not alone in this, that other women around the world need to hear this urgent warning about predators who disguise themselves as Princes Charming, and subscribe to the channel because this story is just beginning. And you need to know every detail of the hell that came after and how I managed to not only survive, but rebuild a completely new life. Now let me continue telling you exactly how it all fell apart in a matter of minutes. In that church room, I was sitting on that upholstered stool with the impeccable wedding dress that had taken 3 hours and 20 minutes to put on with the help of 2 friends who were now outside waiting for the ceremony to begin without imagining the horror that was happening. The elaborate hairstyle that took 2 hours to perfect, done by the best hairdresser in the region, Sulin, who was 38 years old and had her own salon, a low bun with embedded braids and natural white flowers intertwined, the makeup that cost 900 Rs, done by most sought-after makeup artist in the city, Amanda Gomez, sophisticated makeup with golden smoky eyes and a pink nude mouth. And none of that mattered at all, because the man I desperately loved, who I had met exactly a year and a half ago on a rainy Thursday afternoon in March at a small, cozy cafe in the center of the city called Aromas da Manhã, when he offered to share the four-seater table because the establishment was completely packed at lunchtime, that man who had been so incredibly kind since the first second, so attentive in small but significant ways, that he had won me over slowly and respectfully without any pressure, that he knew all my musical tastes, my favorite authors, my favorite restaurants, my films that I watched repeatedly, that he brought me flowers every Friday without failing once, always white lilies that were my absolute favorites since I was a teenager, that man who proposed to me on his knees on a deserted beach at the orange sunset after exactly 8 months of perfect dating with a 3-piece solitaire diamond ring, carats in white gold that cost 45,000 Rs, and that was now on my finger weighing like lead. That man simply didn't exist, never existed. He was a mask meticulously constructed and maintained over the face of a psychopathic killer who had killed at least 3 women in 7 years and was about to become the 4th tragic news story if my father hadn't woken up early and turned the television on to that specific channel at that exact moment. Dad, what do I do? Tell me exactly what. I do now. There are 237 people there outside waiting. The whole family, his brothers and sisters-in-law, his nephews, my cousins who came from 3 different states, my colleagues from college, from the office, clients who became friends. His mother is sitting here in the first row in a lilac dress that she chose 2 months ago. His 2 brothers came from São Paulo. His friends that I met at the last parties and barbecues, like I just run away in front of everyone, and if he comes after me immediately, and if he catches me before I can get to the car, what if he hurts me right there in front of everyone? What if no one believes you and they think you're crazy and they try to stop me from leaving? And then my father placed both hands on my face, forcing me to look him straight in the eyes, and said with absolute firmness that cut through the panic, "Gabriela, take a deep breath and listen. You are going to do exactly what I am telling you without any deviations. You are going to enter that church now. You are going to walk down the aisle smiling, as if absolutely nothing is wrong, as if this is the happiest day of your life. You will hear the priest perform the entire ceremony. You will answer yes when asked if you accept that man. You will receive the white gold ring that is on the satin cushion. You will put the ring on him. You will hear the priest declare you husband and wife. You will let him kiss you when asked. And in the exact second that this kiss ends, the moment his lips separate from yours, you immediately turn your back and run. You do not walk elegantly as a bride should walk. You actually run. Lift the skirt of your dress and run with as much speed as you can produce. Exit through the side door, which is 23 meters from the altar, measuring in a straight line. That discreet dark wooden door that leads straight to the left side parking lot. Go through that door. And 10 meters to the right will be the white convertible car with the top down, engine already running and warmed up, tank filled with 52 liters of gasoline, enough for you to drive 300 kilometers if necessary. And you get in that car, lock the doors immediately, activating the automatic lock, and step on the accelerator without looking back. Just once, I will be delaying people inside the church. I will pretend that I am organizing the line of greetings for you. I will physically hold people back if necessary. I will buy enough time for you to disappear from there and get safely to the police station. I called the federal police at 6:40 in the morning. As soon as the report ended, I spoke to the planning officer. So, a man called Roberto Andrade, I sent a photo of Diego that I have on my cell phone. They confirmed through facial recognition that it is the same person, that it is Daniel Cortez wanted. They are mobilizing a team now, but it will take at least half an hour, maybe 40 minutes to get here, because we are in a church outside the city, 18 kilometers from the center, and today there is a demonstration of truck drivers closing the main avenue. So you need to escape on your own now. You need to save yourself at the police station. After you are safe at the police station, they will arrest him. They will prosecute him. They will put him in jail for the rest of his life where he deserves to be. But first you need to survive the next 30 minutes. Can you do this? Can you be strong for another half hour? I wanted to scream until my throat bled. I wanted to pass out and wake up discovering that it was a horrible nightmare. I wanted the earth to open up and swallow me. But there was no time for any of those options. There was a knock on the door at that exact moment. 3 firm knocks. It was the officiant, Patricia Duarte, a 46-year-old woman who was coordinating the wedding. She was announcing in an excited voice from the other side of the door, "Donna Gabriela, it's time. The godparents are all positioned in their designated places. The groom is at the altar waiting beautifully excited. The priest is ready. The wedding march will start playing in exactly 2 minutes. We need to go down now." My father opened the door just a small crack, keeping his body blocking the view, so that she wouldn't see my state of absolute panic, and said in a surprisingly controlled and cheerful voice, "Patricia, we are having a very emotional moment here between father and daughter. You know how it is. Last time I'm going to hand over my girl. Give us 1 more minute. You can start the music as we've already come down. Everything will be fine." She agreed excitedly, said she was going to tell the organist to start, and left with heels clicking on the marble floor of the corridor. My father closed the door again and came back to me. "It's now. There's no more time. You're strong, Gabriela. You're the most intelligent woman I know. You've already faced difficult things in life and survived. When your mother died, you couldn't work properly for 3 months, but you recovered. When that engagement ended, you thought you would never love again, but you opened yourself up to the possibility. You have strength inside you that you can't even imagine. And today, that strength will save. You, trust me. Trust your father, who never let you down. I love you more than anything in this world, and I won't let you die. Now get up, take 3 deep breaths, dry those tears, adjust the veil, pick up the bouquet, and let's go." I obeyed. Mechanically, I got up from the stool with shaky legs. I took 3 deep breaths, counting mentally, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, trying to oxygenate my panicked brain. I wiped the tears that had started to flow, slightly smudging my perfect makeup. I adjusted the 3-meter-long veil in French tulle that cost 2,300 rays. I picked up the bouquet of white roses and lilies that cost 1,200 rays, and which now seemed to weigh 15 kilos instead of the real 800 grams. "Come on, I can do this, I'm going to do this," was all I could say, my voice coming out strange, distant, mechanical, as if it belonged to someone else very far away. We left the room, walked down the long corridor of the church, white walls decorated with huge floral arrangements of white roses, lilies, orchids, and lilac hydrangeas that cost 18,000 rees in total. 3 days' work by the best florist in the city. We went through 6 arrangements until I reached the large double doors that led to the main hall where the ceremony would take place. I heard the music start at that exact moment, that classic Wagner wedding march that I had chosen with so much care and emotion 4 months ago, when I was planning every detail of that day that would be magical and was turning out to be a nightmare. The solid wooden double doors with colored stained glass windows slowly opened in a dramatic way, operated by 2 church employees dressed in black suits, and 237 pairs of eyes turned simultaneously to me. Flashes of at least 30 cameras shooting, creating flashes of light. 15 cell phones raised high recording video of the moment of the bride's entrance. Everyone smiling broadly, many people already with eyes teary with emotion. My bridesmaid Maria Luisa crying visibly even from afar, and there at the end of the central corridor, lined with a 22-meter-long white carpet, right next to the white marble altar decorated with even more flowers, next to Father Antonio Mendes, who was 64 years old and 28 years old. Priesthood, and who smiled peacefully without imagining there was absolutely no sign of the bomb that was about to explode there. There he was, Diego or Daniel or whatever that monster's real name was, dressed in an impeccable black tuxedo from an Italian brand that cost 7,000 rays, satin bow tie, brown hair combed back with gel, leaving his forehead showing, erect and confident posture, huge smile on his illuminated face, honey-colored eyes shining intensely with apparent happiness. When he saw me appear at the door, and in that surreal and terrifying moment, I looked directly at that face that I had kissed literally hundreds of times over the years. 18-month-old, who had fallen asleep next to me every night for the last 8 months since we decided to live together in my apartment. That face that I thought I loved more than anything in the world, and I could only see a complete stranger, a dangerous predator, a monster disguised as Prince Charming, a killer who had already taken 3 lives and was meticulously planning to take mine too. I started walking because my father had started to lead me by the arm, one slow step at a time, following the rhythm of the music, smiling automatically because my body was operating on autopilot as my conscious mind screamed in absolute panic to turn and run in the opposite direction. But I continued, step after step, 10 feet, 6 feet, 9 feet, 12 feet, 15 feet. It felt like an eternity walking towards my own programmed death, people looking at me with wonder and happiness, quietly commenting on how beautiful the dress looked, how radiant I looked, how perfect a couple we were. If only they knew the horrible truth. 60 feet, 21 feet. We finally arrived at the altar after what felt like years, but it was only 90 seconds. My father formally handed me over to him with a handshake that was too firm, almost aggressive, an intense look that Diego didn't fully understand, but that to me clearly said, "Be strong, daughter, you can survive this." And then I was standing next to him. He took my right hand with his left hand, and the hand was warm, firm, the skin soft, the nails perfectly cut and clean as always, and he whispered in my ear with that deep and seductive voice that had won me over, "You are absolutely too beautiful, my love. My life, more beautiful than I imagined possible. I can't believe you're finally going to be my real wife. We're finally going to be a real family. I can't wait to start our life together officially." And his tone was one of absolute possession, not genuine love. How I had never noticed before that dangerous possessive nuance, that predatory gleam in the honey-colored eyes. How I had been so blind. The priest began the ceremony with a solemn and paused voice. He spoke about the sacred sacrament of marriage, about true love and commitment eternal, about building a life together through joys and difficulties, about fidelity and mutual respect. Each word sounding absurdly and tragically ironic, given what I had just discovered about the man next to me. He read excerpts from the first letter to the Corinthians, chapter 13, about love being patient and kind. He asked us to kneel on the red velvet kneeler. I obeyed mechanically, my legs shaking so much that they barely supported me even. When I was kneeling, I felt his hand on my waist supporting me with a touch that now made me want to vomit. I had to use all the mental control I had to not scream hysterically and run away immediately. The priest said long prayers in Latin that I neither understood nor paid attention to. My mind was completely occupied thinking about what was going to happen in the next few minutes, mentally visualizing the exact path I would have to take from the altar to the side door, 23 meters, turning slightly to the left, then 10 meters to the car, praying that my legs wouldn't give out, that I wouldn't trip over the long tail of the dress so that she could run even with 10-centimeter heels. It was time for the personal vows we had written. He spoke first, took folded paper from the inside pocket of his jacket, unfolded it with firm hands, and began to read in an emotional voice. "Gabriela, from the moment I saw you in that cafe a year and a half ago, my life changed completely. You brought light to days that were dark. You brought meaning to an existence that was empty. You made me want to be a better man. You made me believe in true love again after giving up. I promise to love you unconditionally every day that I have left. I promise to protect you from all harm. I promise to build a safe and happy home for you. I promise to be a faithful partner in all circumstances. I promise to take care of you in sickness and in health until death do us part. You are my most precious gift, and I will cherish you forever." And he folded the paper, put it back in his pocket, and looked at me with eyes shining with tears that seemed genuine, but I now knew were completely fabricated. That monster was a consummate actor, a conscienceless psychopath, capable of imitating human emotions perfectly. Several people in the audience sobbed, moved by the beautiful wishes. If they had known that protecting him meant keeping him alive only until he could gain access to the money and then killing me in a way that looked like an accident. My turn came. I had written 3 pages of passionate wishes 2 weeks ago. I had spent 6 hours choosing each word, but now I couldn't even remember a single sentence. I took the paper from the small pocket hidden in my dress, unfolded it, looked at the words that seemed to have been written in a previous life by a different person. I opened my mouth, but no sound came out for 3 eternal seconds of awkward silence. Then I forced the words out of my tight throat. Diego, I promise to love and respect you every day. My voice breaking in the middle, visibly breaking. I couldn't continue reading for the rest. I simply folded the paper back and lowered my head. Some people interpreted it as strong emotion, leaving me speechless, and laughed softly, finding it cute and touching. They made collective ah sounds. If they knew it was pure terror paralyzing me, the priest, mercifully, didn't insist that I continue. He just smiled understandingly and continued to the next part. He asked if I, Gabriela Martins de Oliveira, accepted that man, Diego Henrique Carvalho, as my legitimate husband to love and respect in health and in illness, in joy and in sadness, in riches and in poverty, until death do us part. I took a deep breath and replied, I accept, with the firmest voice I could produce at that moment. He asked the same question to Diego, who replied, I accept, with absolute conviction and a radiant smile, as if that was genuinely the happiest day of his life. Perhaps it was in fact, since he was about to acquire legal access to assets worth almost 1.5 million reais between apartment, car, savings, and insurance of life. The priest blessed the white gold rings that were on a white satin cushion held by my 6-year-old nephew Gabriel, dressed in an adorable mini suit. Diego took my ring first, an 18-carat white gold ring with 3 small diamonds of half a carat each that had cost 7,000 reais, and placed it on my left ring finger with such feigned delicacy and tenderness that my stomach turned violently. Then I took his ring, also made of 18-carat white gold, but smooth without stones, 5,000 reais, and I put it on his finger, with my hands shaking visibly. He held my hand with both of his, stabilizing the tremor, a gesture that everyone interpreted as affectionate, but that for me was imprisoning. The priest finally announced in a loud and joyful voice, by the power granted to me by God and by the Holy Roman Catholic Apostolic Church, I officially declare you husband and wife, united in holy matrimony. The groom may kiss the bride. And then he turned to me with that smile, beautiful man who had won me over months ago. He placed both hands on my face with tenderness that I now knew was completely false and calculated. He slowly brought his face closer to mine, creating suspense for the audience that was in expectant silence, and kissed me. It was a long, lingering, passionate kiss, his tongue invading my mouth. I closed my eyes tightly and let it happen, because I desperately needed it to seem normal. I needed him to suspect absolutely nothing until I was safely away from there. The kiss seemed to last for an hour, but it was probably 20 seconds. The entire audience exploded in enthusiastic applause, shouts of joy, whistles. The exit music started to play immediately, something lively and triumphant by Bach. He finally moved his lips away from mine, looked me deep in the eyes with that intense look that used to melt me, took my hand firmly intertwining his fingers, and began to turn his body towards the central corridor so we could start walking towards the main exit where we would stand for at least 40 minutes, receiving greetings and congratulations from each one of the 237 guests. But I quickly looked to the left and saw the side door discreetly ajar. I saw through it the parking lot illuminated by the bright afternoon light. I saw the white car with the engine running. I saw my only chance of surviving that day. So I did something that no one, absolutely no one in that church was expecting. I suddenly let go of his hand with a violent pull that broke the interlacing of fingers. I grabbed the heavy skirt of the dress with both hands, lifting it from the floor to almost knee height, exposing my legs and shoes. White wedding shoes and high heels, and I ran. I really ran. With all the strength and speed I had in my body, I heard him shout behind me in a confused and then increasingly louder and more aggressive voice, Gabriela, what are you doing? Wait, where are you going? Come back here, Gabriela. I heard the confused and shocked hubbub of people. Some initially laughed, thinking it was a joke or a strange tradition they didn't know about. Others asked out loud what was happening. My father immediately moved to block the corridor with my body, preventing people from going after me. He shouted something about the bride needing a moment alone, but I didn't stop to listen. I didn't look back even once. I ran across the side nave of the church. I avoided 2 marble columns. I almost tripped when the heel of my right foot caught on the carpet, but I regained my balance. I continued running. I reached the dark wooden side door. I pushed it hard. I crossed. I felt the cold air of the September afternoon on my face that I was burning with heat and panic, the smell of rain coming mixed with gasoline from cars. It was exactly 3 hours and 42 minutes when I arrived in the white convertible car. I grabbed the driver's door handle, opened it, threw myself on the beige leather seat, locked all the doors immediately by activating the central automatic lock button. And at that exact moment, I looked in the rear-view mirror and saw him leaving through the side door too, running after me, but his face was completely transformed. The mask of a fiancé in love had completely fallen, revealing what he was underneath. He was no longer the gentleman. He was the uncovered predator. His facial expression was one of pure anger, eyes narrowed in fury, jaw clenched. He shouted as he ran, "Get back here now, Gabriella. We need to talk. What the hell has gotten into you? Stop the car immediately." But the tone was threatening, aggressive, dangerous. There was real anger there. Potential violence. The mask had been completely removed, and he wasn't even trying to pretend anymore. I stepped on the accelerator with all my might. The car was automatic, thanks to God. There was no clutch to slow me down. The engine roared and the vehicle sped away, tires squealing loudly on the wet asphalt of the parking lot, leaving dark rubber marks. He continued chasing for a few meters, but the car was obviously infinitely faster. I looked in the rearview mirror again and saw him standing in the middle of the parking lot now, his hands on his head in a gesture of absolute frustration. And then he turned abruptly and started running in the opposite direction towards his own car, which was parked in front of the church. And I knew immediately that I had just a few precious minutes of head start before he got in his car and started really chasing me. I accelerated even more, leaving the parking lot. I took the side street. I ignored the red light turning right. I accelerated on the main street. 60 kilometers per hour, 70, 80. I went over the legal speed limit, which was 50. I took the entrance to the highway that left the city towards the neighboring town where the police station was. I accelerated more, 100 kilometers per hour now, my brain automatically working in pure survival mode because there was no mental space to process emotions or trauma. I just needed to drive. Just get away, just get to a safe place alive. The cell phone inside the small handbag that was on the passenger seat started to ring. I picked it up quickly, keeping one hand on the steering wheel. It was him calling, his number appearing on the screen with a smiling photo of him that I had put as a contact photo. I ignored the call. It rang again immediately. I ignored it again. He called 12 times in a row. Then he started sending messages. I saw the notifications appearing one after the other on the cell phone screen. "Love, what happened because you ran away like that? I'm very worried. Are you okay? To the car? Let's talk. This is definitely a misunderstanding. Gabriella, please respond for the love of God. You're scaring me a lot where you are now. I need to know that you're safe. Tell me where you are." And then the tone of the messages changed drastically, becoming aggressive and threatening. "To the car now. I'm not kidding. You don't know who you're messing with. If you don't come back immediately, you'll be very sorry. I will find you no matter where you hide, Gabriella. You are my wife now, and you will learn." I deleted the messages. Without reading the rest, I blocked his number immediately. I continued driving at a dangerous speed. I had to get to the police station in the neighboring city, a city called Santa Maria, which was 42 kilometers away. That was where my father had said that the federal police were mobilizing reinforcements and waiting for my arrival. I drove for 28 minutes in a straight line. On the highway, overtaking trucks, cars, motorcycles, 120 kilometers per hour in several sections. Dangerously fast, especially for that road that had curves and holes. Then I saw in the rearview mirror a dark car accelerating very behind me, approaching quickly. It was a black sedan that I recognized as his. He had caught up with me. My heart, which was already racing, raced even more if that was possible. I felt dizzy, nauseous, but I forced focus. I stepped even harder on the accelerator, even though I knew it was dangerous. 140 kilometers per hour now, speed maximum that car could produce. The speedometer needle trembling at its limit. The steering wheel vibrating in my hands that were sweating profusely. Sweat running down my face, completely ruining the expensive makeup. tears that I didn't even know I was producing, falling on the expensive wedding dress, and now completely ruined, dirty with sweat, tears, makeup. It also accelerated. 150 kilometers from what it seemed. It started to stick right behind my car, less than 3 meters away, honking insistently, headlights loud on. Even though it was daylight, waving through the window for me to pull over and stop, I maintained an absurd speed. He tried to overtake on the right, taking advantage of the shoulder. I accelerated more, blocking him. I didn't let him. He turned back, tried to the left, invading the opposite lane, risking a head-on collision with an oncoming truck. I swerved to close him again. We were in a cinematic chase, but this wasn't a movie. It was my real life. It was my last minutes of existence. If he managed to catch me and get me off that road, we passed through a small town, children playing on the sidewalk who stopped to look at speeding cars, a woman crossing the street who had to run back to the sidewalk. We almost caused a multiple accident at an intersection, but I couldn't stop. I couldn't slow down. It was literal life or death. Then I finally saw ahead after a curve, the police barrier signs, a federal police checkpoint. There were 7 vehicles blocking the 2 lanes of the highway, blue and red lights spinning. At least 15 uniformed and armed police officers. My father had managed it. He had. I successfully alerted them. I immediately slowed down 100 kilometers per hour, 80, 60, 40, 20. I stopped completely a few meters before the police cars, hands shaking so much on the steering wheel that I couldn't even move it. Behind me, he also braked suddenly, making the black sedan skid sideways, but instead of trying to escape as I expected, he got out of the car calmly, with deliberate and calm movements, with his hands raised above his head in a gesture of surrender, and began to walk slowly towards the police officers. With that charming smile perfectly back on his face as if it had never left, as if the last 20 minutes of violent chase had never happened. And I heard him speaking loudly in a voice full of convincing concern. "Officers, thank God you are here. My wife had a severe psychotic break. We just got married less than an hour ago, and she ran away in the middle of the wedding ceremony. I think the extreme stress and pressure was too much for her. She clearly needs urgent psychiatric medical help. I was just trying to catch up with her on the road to make sure I was absolutely sure that she was fine and wasn't going to hurt herself. She could be a danger to herself in this state of mind. Please help her." And he seemed so absurdly sincere, so genuinely concerned, so perfectly convincing in every word and facial expression, that for one terrifying moment I saw clear doubt on the faces of at least 3 or 4 of the younger officers. I saw them looking at me in the car with my ruined wedding dress and smudged makeup, and they must have been thinking that maybe he was right, that maybe I had really freaked out. But then an older man came out of the vehicles, delegate uniform with gold stars on the shoulders, a serious-looking man of about 55 years old, well-cut gray hair, gray mustache, impeccable uniform despite the heat. He calmly approached him and said in a firm and official voice, "Daniel Rodrigo Cortez, you are under arrest for the qualified homicides of Camila Rodriguez, Patricia Mendez, and Amanda Silva, and for the attempted murder of Gabriela Martins. You have the constitutional right to remain silent, because everything saying can and will be used against you in court. You have the right to a lawyer, and if you can't afford one, the state will provide one. You understand your rights as I explained." And immediately 4 large police officers quickly advanced on him, grabbed his arms, turned him on his back sharply, threw him forcefully face down on the hot asphalt, one knee on his back, handcuffed him with his hands behind his body. Metal handcuffs clicking loudly as they closed. He shouted indignantly, fighting the police. "This is a grotesque mistake. My name is Diego Henrique Carvalho, not Daniel. Nothing. I have legal documents, identity, CPF, driver's license. I have never killed anyone. This is unfair persecution. You will regret it bitterly when my lawyers sue you all. I know my rights. I know important people in this city." But his voice had completely lost that seductive and controlled tone. Now it was just pure anger leaking out, real threat, verbal violence, true personality finally exposed without filters. They lifted him up by pulling his arms. He stood up in handcuffs, clothes covered in dirt and dust, face red with anger, and was pushed towards one of the vans. I got out of the car with my legs completely wobbly. I almost fell when I stepped on the ground. I had to hold on to the open door of the car to keep my balance. A female police officer, a young woman in her 30s, hair tied up in a bun, immediately ran to support me, holding my arm. He gently guided me to one of the police cars. He made me sit in the back seat, which was cool with the air conditioning on. He brought a bottle of cold mineral water, which I drank half of at once. "It's okay now, ma'am. You are completely safe. He will never come near you again." But I didn't feel safe at all. I felt broken inside, deceived in the worst possible way, cosmically humiliated, used, manipulated, almost dead. The police chief, the man who had arrested, he came to talk to me a few minutes later, introduced himself as Delegate Roberto Andrade from the federal police, calmly explained that when my father called in the morning at 6:40, they immediately checked the national identification system and confirmed that Diego Henrique Carvalho was a completely false identity. Documents perfectly forged technically, but absolutely false legally. His fingerprints matched perfectly with those of Daniel Rodrigo Cortez, who was registered in the system, actively sought for over 2 years. They had already had preventive arrest warrants issued in 5 different states. He was on the official list of the 20 most wanted criminals in the country. "Ma'am, you had extraordinary luck, a true miracle. If you had consummated this marriage legally without discovering the truth, probably in a few weeks or at most 2 months, we would be investigating your death." He is extremely meticulous in planning, extremely patient in execution, extremely cruel in action. We have already deeply studied his behavioral pattern in previous cases. He takes on average between 3 weeks and 2 months between the official marriage and the murder of the victim. Enough calculated time to have complete access to accounts, bank transfers, make gradual transfers that do not arouse suspicion, change insurance policies, placing him as the sole beneficiary, modify wills, sell properties if necessary. When he finally kills the victim, he has already prepared absolutely everything meticulously to disappear without leaving a trace. This time, we managed to intercept him before he completed the cycle. You will need to come to the Central Police Station tomorrow to give a detailed formal statement. But for today, you can go home and rest because you went through severe trauma. I heard all that, sitting in that car seat in a state of deep shock. My brain simply turned, refusing to completely accept the impossible reality of what had almost happened to me, starting to mentally calculate how much time I would have had if I had actually gotten married without finding out anything. 3 weeks at best, maybe a month, 6 weeks if I was really lucky, and how exactly he would do when he decided it was time to eliminate me. Would he push me down the internal staircase of the 2-story apartment, breaking my neck? Would he put slow poison in my food during a romantic dinner? Would he discreetly cut the brake cables of my car, causing a fatal accident on some dangerous curve? Would I violently hit my head against corner of furniture during a fabricated argument, later pretending that it was a terrible domestic accident? He would give me an overdose of prescription drugs dissolved in drink, later claiming that I was depressed and he tried to help, but I failed. I sat in that vehicle for 45 endless minutes while they finished processing all the bureaucracy of his prison, documenting everything, photographing, taking fingerprints again. I saw when they put him inside the prisoner transport van, he looked directly at me through the small barred window, and for the first time, I really saw who he truly was, without masks, without pretense, without acting. The eyes, his men were completely empty, cold as ice, calculating. There was no love there. There never was for a second. He never had genuine affection, only strategic interest. Predatory calculation. A professional predator evaluating prey. He almost managed to capture but escaped at the last second. He smiled then, a small and absolutely sinister smile, and moved his lips in silence, but I could read perfectly what he said. "You should have died." I completely froze in horror. Those 5 words definitively confirming everything my father had warned me about. The police van finally left, taking him away to maximum security federal prison, and only then, only when he was physically far away and couldn't see me, did I finally break down completely, start to cry convulsively, violent sobs racking my entire body, hyperventilating again. Every month of completely fake relationship playing through my head like a horror movie in slow motion, every affectionate gesture that I now understood had been pure calculated manipulation. every kiss that had been a lie designed to make me vulnerable and confident, every passionate declaration of eternal love that was a complete fraud created to deceive me. How long exactly he had studied me before finally approaching me in a seemingly casual way in that cafe 18 months ago. How much he already knew about me before we exchanged the first word. My profession, my assets, my family situation. Was it a true coincidence that he was in that specific cafe on that specific day and time? Or had he carefully orchestrated that meeting? He had certainly orchestrated it because men like that, professional psychopaths, experienced predators, leave absolutely nothing to chance. He had chosen that place knowing that I frequented 3 times a week. I had chosen that exact time of noon, and half knowing that I always had lunch there on Thursdays. I had created the whole situation to seem casual, organic, even romantic, like a cute story to tell friends later, and I had completely fallen in like an idiot in love. The feminine police officer stayed with me the whole time, trying to calm me down, offering more water, tissues for the tears that wouldn't stop, said she would personally escort me to my father's house to make sure I arrived safe. I agreed, because I couldn't even imagine driving alone in that state. We got into a police car. She drove, and another police officer followed behind with the white convertible car. We made our way back to the city, 42 kilometers that seemed endless. We passed the church, where the ceremony had taken place just 2 hours ago, although it seemed like it had been weeks. The place was already completely empty. The decorations were still set up, but without a living soul. A totally abandoned scene that looked like a horror film set. I later learned from my father that he had waited exactly 10 minutes after my dramatic escape to officially announce that the ceremony had been canceled due to a serious medical emergency, that the wedding was not going to happen, that the guests had to leave, and that they would receive explanations later. There was a huge commotion, widespread confusion. His mother, a woman in her 50s who I had met 6 months before and who seemed to genuinely like me, cried profusely saying that her son had no idea what had happened, that he was also a victim of the situation, that he had been deceived about who I really was. His 2 brothers were outraged, demanding explanations. They tried to talk to me on the cell phone, but my phone was off. Some guests next to me were extremely worried about me. They tried to call me dozens of times. Close friends even went to the apartment to look for me, but obviously they couldn't find me. We finally arrived at my father's house at 7:20 in the evening. He was literally at the door waiting for me since 5 in the afternoon, when he received confirmation from the police that I was safe. When he saw me getting out of the police car with my wedding dress completely destroyed, torn at the hem, dirty with dirt and sweat, makeup absolutely ruined with runny mascara and lipstick blurred, hair undone with a veil hanging crookedly, a bouquet that I didn't even remember I was still holding, all withered and crumpled with half of the flowers fallen. He ran to me across the garden and hugged me with such desperate strength that he almost crushed my ribs, and I couldn't breathe for a few seconds. Thank God Almighty you're alive. Thank God you made it. Thank God I woke up at that time. He repeated this crying openly. My father, who I have never, absolutely never, in 32 years of life had seen crying, was now sobbing loudly, tears running down his face, body shaking. We entered the house together. He took me straight to the guest room that had been my childhood room before I left home at 23. He helped me take off that damn dress that had cost a small fortune, and now symbolically represented the worst day of my entire life. I put on extremely comfortable clothes, old gray sweatpants, and an oversized cotton t-shirt. I sat on the bed that had a flowered bedspread that I had chosen myself when I was 15. And finally, I let absolutely everything go without control. I cried for 3 hours straight without stopping. Violent sobs, occasional screams of frustration and anger. My father was literally by my side the whole time, holding my hand firmly. I said absolutely nothing, because there was simply nothing appropriate to say. Just physical presence, just true and unconditional love from someone who really cared about me as a person. Instead of seeing me as a target, eventually the intense crying subsided, becoming spaced sobs, then just silent tears, then simply absolute physical and emotional exhaustion. I slept still dressed in those simple clothes, with the lights in the room all on because I was irrationally afraid of the dark now. My father sat vigilantly on a wooden chair next to the bed, literally watching me all night, as if I would disappear or die if he blinked or slept for a second. I woke up the next morning. Sunday, the 24th of September, 8:35 in the morning, according to the digital clock on the bedside table, with the horrible and desperate feeling that it had all been a cruel nightmare, that I was going to wake up and discover that I had imagined everything. But then I saw my father still in the chair. I hadn't slept a single hour the whole night, watching me protectively. I saw the wedding dress thrown in the corner of the room like discarded trash, and reality hit me again. With total, devastating force. It wasn't a nightmare. It was completely real. I had literally almost married a serial killer, almost become his fourth official victim, almost ended up as a tragic headline in a television report about unsolved crimes. Now I need you, who have been following this story so far, to leave your like, because you need to see the complete turnaround that happened afterwards. Comment which one country or city you are watching me, and subscribe to the channel, because what comes now is how I not only survived, but rebuilt an entirely new life from the ashes of this tragedy. The recovery process began slowly and painfully. I got out of bed with my entire body aching as if I had been run over by a truck, muscles tense from the stress, head throbbing with a terrible headache. The first thing I did was turn on my cell phone, which had been turned off since the night before. The screen lit up and immediately started vibrating non-stop with accumulated notifications. There were an impressive 143 unread messages from 42 different people, 82 missed calls from various numbers, 27 recorded voice messages. I quickly went through the contacts, seeing who had tried to contact me. Extremely concerned close friends asking if I was okay. Cousins who had traveled to the wedding, asking in confusion what exactly had happened. Co-workers saying they had seen news published on the local online news site about the dramatic arrest of a wanted killer during a wedding ceremony. The story had obviously been leaked to the press. I was going to inevitably become a sensationalist headline. I deleted absolutely everything without replying to a single message. I didn't have the emotional or mental energy to give detailed explanations. Not now at this moment. Perhaps I would never be able to explain it properly. My father had made strong black coffee the way I liked it and had prepared toast with butter, which was my favorite breakfast since childhood. But I tried 3 small bites, and my stomach turned violently, threatening to vomit everything. I only managed to drink the hot coffee, holding the cup with both hands because they were shaking. We sat in heavy silence at the kitchen, until I finally managed to ask the question that had been rattling around in my head. Dad, tell me exactly how you found out. I want to know every little detail, how you knew with such certainty that it was him. And he began to methodically tell the full story from the beginning. He had woken up at 5:30 on that fateful Saturday morning, my wedding day. As he had always woken up religiously every day for 30 years, he had gone to make his morning coffee ritual exactly as he did. He turned on the big screen television in the living room to the news channel that usually watched. I was paying partial attention while measuring the coffee powder, and the water was getting hot when at 6 o'clock and 12 minutes, a special weekend program about unsolved crimes in Brazil started. An investigative series that the channel had been producing for months. He was going to change the channel immediately because he considered the subject too heavy for the morning of his daughter's wedding. But curiosity made him pause for a moment. The presenter, a serious-looking man in his 50s, began by saying in a dramatic voice, "Today we are going to talk about one of the most dangerous and slippery criminals in the country, Daniel Cortez, known in police circles as the Bride Killer. A meticulous predator who seduces successful women, gains their trust completely, officially marries them, and then brutally murders them weeks or months later to inherit assets and disappear without a trace." My father completely stopped what he was doing, dropped the cup on the counter, and stared at the television when the photo appeared. It was a large frontal photo of his face, taking up half the screen, and even with a short beard and different, shorter hair that he no longer had. The recognition was instantaneous and absolute. I felt my blood literally run cold, heart stop for 2 seconds, breath catch in my throat. I thought I was hallucinating or confusing people. But the more I looked, the more I was sure. The identical scar on my left eyebrow, the characteristic dimple on my chin, the unique shape of the face, the spacing between the eyes. I let the coffee cup fall straight to the ceramic floor, where it broke into 6 large pieces, spilling hot coffee all over the place. But I didn't even care or look down. I continued looking mesmerized and horrified at the television while they showed more information. The presenter then narrated the 3 officially documented cases, showing photos of the victims, beautiful young women smiling in old photos who had been happy before meeting the predator. The first victim, Camila Rodriguez from Porto Alegre, 28 years old, prosperous dentist, married him in March 7 years ago using the false name of Ricardo Mendez at the time, was found drowned in the bathtub of her apartment 22 days after the wedding. Initial investigation by the civil police concluded domestic accident because she had supposedly taken 3 medication tablets for a severe headache that caused extreme drowsiness, causing her to sleep in the bathtub and drown. But relatives responded saying that she had a pathological fear of water covering her face. She never took a bath, just a quick shower. It would have been completely uncharacteristic. Her husband at the time officially declared that he had left the apartment to buy Italian food in a restaurant 8 blocks away. When he returned, 50 minutes later, she was dead. He received life insurance in the hefty amount of 400,000 reais 3 weeks later when the investigation was closed. She completely disappeared from the city 10 days after receiving the money. Second victim, Patricia Mendez from Curitiba, 31 years old, talented architect with her own successful office, married him 3 years ago when he used the identity of Fernando Costa. A month and a half later, she mysteriously fell from the balcony of her apartment on the 12th floor. During a stormy night, he claimed that they had drunk 2 bottles of wine during a romantic dinner. She had drunk more than him. She was too happy. She went out onto the balcony to see the rain. Despite him asking her not to go out, she tripped over her own foot and fell on the protective railing that was rusty and gave way. Investigation was unable to prove that it was a homicide. They filed it as a tragic domestic accident. He inherited an apartment valued at 300,000 reais. Her office worth 200,000, plus a bank account with 200,000 in savings, a total of approximately 700,000 reais, disappeared from the city exactly 2 weeks after the funeral. Third victim, Amanda Silva from Brasilia, 29 years old, doctor, extremely competent dermatologist with her own profitable clinic. She married him 2 years ago when he used the name Carlos Oliveira. 2 months later, she was found dead in bed from an overdose of anxiolytics and antidepressants. He claimed that she suffered from undiagnosed severe depression that he had noticed during their marriage, that he tried to insist that she see a psychiatrist, but she always refused, that night he had gone to the gym, and when he came back, she was dead with empty bottles of medicine by her side. He left a suicide note that experts later questioned its authenticity but were unable to prove be false. Investigation classified as suicide. He inherited a clinic valued at 500,000 reais, an apartment worth 600,000, a bank account with 100,000 reais, life insurance worth 1 million reais, an impressive total of an approximately 2,200,000 reais, sold absolutely everything, and disappeared completely 3 weeks after burial. It was only when Amanda's devastated mother finally insisted obsessively for 8 months to reopen the case that the police began to investigate more deeply and connect the dots. Between the 3 cases, realized the frightening pattern, discovered that the same man using different names had married 3 women who died mysteriously a short time later in circumstances convenient to him, began coordinated federal investigation, discovered his true identity through fingerprint analysis of old documents. Daniel Rodrigo Cortez was born in São Paulo 38 years ago. An extremely dysfunctional family, a violent alcoholic father who regularly beat his mother and children, a severely depressed mother who committed suicide by hanging herself when he was just 12 years old. He and 2 younger brothers were placed in the adoption system. He went through 7 different adoptive families during his adolescence because he always displayed manipulative and disturbing behavior. His first serious girlfriend at the age of 19, called Luciana, ended the relationship with him. After 6 months, 2 months later, he suffered an extremely suspicious car accident. Where brakes failed completely while descending the mountains, he survived but became paraplegic. The investigation was unable to prove sabotage, but the mechanic said that the cables seemed to be cut on purpose. At the age of 23, Daniel married for the first time with a 25-year-old woman called Renata, who had inherited the house from his recently deceased parents. 6 months later, the house mysteriously caught fire in the early hours of the morning, killing her. He escaped. Saying he was in the bathroom when the fire started, he received insurance for 200,000 reais, It was considered a tragedy, but they never proved arson. At 28 began the clearly documented pattern with Camilla. 3 years later, Patricia. 2 years later, Amanda, and now I, Gabriella, would be the fourth victim if it weren't for that television being turned on at absolutely the right time. My father finished telling all this in a voice heavy with emotion, and I sat there, processing, trying to understand the magnitude of the evil that almost destroyed me, exactly how long he had watched me before approaching. He had chosen that cafe because he knew I went there often. He had created the situation of the crowded place to have an excuse to ask for sitting at my desk. Every detail had been planned. I had not been loved. I had been hunted. I spent Sunday and Monday in a state of total dissociation, sleeping a lot, waking up suddenly scared from horrible nightmares, where he appeared in several different scenarios, killing me in varied and creative ways, drowning, falling, being run over, poisoning. I woke up sweating and screaming. My father had to run to the room to wake me up and bring me back to reality. On Tuesday, I had to go and give a formal statement at the Central Police Station. According to the police I had asked, spent 4 hours and 20 minutes sitting in an interrogation room, answering detailed questions, telling absolutely every detail of the relationship from the first meeting until the moment of escape. The delegate who conducted the interview, Dr. Renata Lima, 50 years old, was extremely kind and professional. She patiently explained that my testimony was absolutely crucial to hermetically closing the case against him, that I was the only victim who survived and was able to testify directly about his modus operandi. I told him everything. I talked about how he had been too perfect in impossible ways, always knowing exactly what to say, always saying perfect romantic phrases as if he had a script, always with specific little gifts that demonstrated that he knew my tastes, when in fact he had studied, always making me feel special and unique, when in fact I was just a target. I told him that after 6 months of living together, he began to subtly suggest changes to my financial and legal documents, saying things like, "Since we are a serious couple and are getting married soon, you should update your documents." To reflect our partnership, I had naively agreed. I changed my will, placing him as heir to 50% of absolutely everything I owned. I had changed my life insurance policy, placing him as the main beneficiary of 500,000 Rs. I had included him as authorized in the joint account of my law firm, giving access to all financial transactions. He had specifically asked to be included, claiming that this way he could help me with managing my finances, which I hated doing. I told him that just 2 weeks before the wedding, he insistently suggested that I undergo a very complete medical checkup, including cardiac and neurological exams. Oh, at the time I thought it was cute and thoughtful that he was worried about my health, thinking about when we had children. Now I realize sinisterly that he was officially documenting my perfect state of health so that he could later convincingly claim that I had undiagnosed heart or neurological problems when he killed me. The deputy wrote down absolutely everything with an increasingly somber expression. At the end she said, "Madam Gabriella, his level of meticulous planning and premeditation is genuinely frightening. He is a classic textbook psychopath, highly intelligent, extremely charming on the surface, completely devoid of real empathy or genuine remorse, capable of mimicking human emotions perfectly without feeling anything internally. He was executing a plan that had probably been at least 18 months in development since before he met you. You had unbelievable and literally miraculous luck. It was the difference of minutes between life and death." After the official statement, she sent me to obligatorily talk to a police psychologist, Dr. Fernanda Costa, a 42-year-old clinical psychologist specializing in victim care of violent crimes and complex traumas. She carefully explained to me that I was inevitably going to go through an extremely complicated and confusing grieving process, because I was not just grieving a physical person who had died. I was grieving an entire 18-month relationship that I abruptly discovered was completely false from start to finish. Every seemingly good memory was now irreversibly tainted by the horrible truth. Every supposedly happy moment was in reality coldly calculated manipulation. Every tender kiss had been strategy. Every passionate declaration had been a lie. You will inevitably question your own judgment over and over again, You will blame yourself for not seeing signs you think you should have seen. You will have severe difficulty trusting people, especially men. You will have recurring nightmares and intrusive flashbacks to the trauma, classic symptoms of severe post-traumatic stress disorder. All of this is completely normal and expected. Considering what you have been through, it is not weakness. It is a natural human reaction to extreme trauma, but you urgently need intensive weekly psychological support for the next 6 months at least, probably years to fully process and heal. She handed me a printed list with contact details for 3 therapists who are extremely specialized in trauma. I said that the federal police would fully cover the cost of all sessions through a special assistance program for victims of serious crimes. I genuinely thanked him because I knew that I had no emotional conditions to go back to work for months and money would eventually be tight. I left that police station at 7:15 in the evening, completely exhausted, emotionally and physically. My father picked me up, took me straight back home. He had made my absolutely favorite dish since childhood, trying to cheer me up in the slightest, screw pasta. With homemade tomato sauce with fresh basil, a simple but which always comforted me, I managed to eat a small but reasonable portion. The first decent meal I had managed since Saturday, 5 days practically without eating. I had already visibly lost 4 kilos, my clothes were becoming loose, my face was becoming too thin. That Tuesday night, I finally managed to sleep a whole night without nightmares for the first time since the trauma. I woke up on Wednesday feeling that maybe, just maybe, I could eventually survive this. I called one of the therapists on the list that same day, Dr. Paulo Mendes, a 49-year-old psychologist specializing in trauma. I scheduled an emergency session for Thursday morning. I arrived promptly at 9 o'clock at his office. A cozy room with a comfortable armchair, soft, natural light, green plants, calm atmosphere, and I completely broke down. I cried during practically the entire first session, which he generously extended to 2 hours instead of a standard hour without charging extra. At the end, he said something that stuck in my mind. "Gabriella, you went through extreme and devastating trauma, but you demonstrated extraordinary resilience at the critical moment when every emotional fiber of yours wanted to stay and believe in him because you loved him. Your survival instinct overcame. You chose to run away. This shows incredible inner strength that you didn't even know you possessed. You will recover eventually. It will take months or years. It will hurt intensely, but you will definitely be okay because you are fundamentally strong." I held on to those words as if they were a lifeline in the ocean. I started weekly religious therapy, every Thursday at 9 o'clock without ever missing. Weeks began to pass slowly. I continued living with my father because I couldn't even think about going back to the apartment I had shared with him, the 120 square meter apartment that had my name but was full of his things, his clothes in the closet, his toiletries in the bathroom, his books on the shelves, his favorite food in the fridge. His presence permeated in every room. My father eventually went there with 2 friends and collected all his things and put them in boxes that went straight to the trash. I wanted absolutely nothing that had belonged to that monster. He cleaned the entire apartment deeply, hired a heavy-duty cleaning company. When I finally went to visit the place, 6 weeks later, it looked different, clean, but I still felt his ghostly presence. I decided then that I needed to get rid of it completely. I put the apartment up for sale in October. Real estate agent got a buyer in 3 weeks. Young couple wanting their first property. I sold it for 480,000 Rs, which was fair market price. I used the money to buy a completely different new apartment in a completely different neighborhood. 68 square meters, 2 bedrooms, completely recently renovated, 320,000 Rs in cash. I used the remaining 160,000 to invest in conservative fixed income financial investments that yielded approximately 6,400 Rs per month. Enough passive income to supplement while I was away from work recovering. Because I really wasn't able to practice law, I tried to return to the office in November, but it was disastrous. I couldn't concentrate on cases. I completely lost my train of thought in the middle of hearings. I had panic attacks in crowded elevators. I had to pass all my active cases on to fellow partners at the firm. I took official medical leave from 6 months, which was eventually extended to 8. I only managed to effectively return to work in April of the following year. Still fragile but functional. In the meantime, the criminal case against him progressed. He was preventively detained in a maximum security federal prison awaiting trial. He tried to get bail, claiming he was not a flight risk. The judge denied it, citing the extreme gravity of the crimes and a proven history of disappearing. He spent 10 months in prison until the trial was scheduled. It finally happened in August, 13 months after that Saturday, which was almost my last day. I had to testify in person. It was without a doubt the most difficult experience and the most terrifying thing I've ever faced in my life. Entering that jury room, a large room with a high ceiling, strong lighting, public in the galleries, press present with cameras, seeing him sitting at the defendant's table wearing orange prison clothes, hands handcuffed in front of him, but still maintaining that strangely confident posture, that intense gaze. He looked directly at me when I entered the room and blinked deliberately. Blinked as if we were accomplices in a shared secret. I felt a violent wave of nausea. I had to take a deep breath and control myself not to vomiting right there. I sat on the witness stand. The judge asked me to report the facts in full to the jury. I spoke for 45 uninterrupted minutes, telling every detail from the first meeting to the dramatic escape, my voice breaking several times, tears flowing that I couldn't control, several jurors also visibly crying. When I finished, his defense lawyer, a 60-year-old man wearing an expensive suit, began to interrogate me, trying to discredit me in cruel ways. He suggested that I had invented the whole story to cancel marriage because I was afraid of commitment, pointed out that technically I was not the victim of a crime since nothing had happened to me physically, said that my father had made a hasty report based on paranoia and coincidence of appearance, tried to make it seem like I was a hysterical and dramatic woman. But the public prosecutor, a competent man of 52, countered by presenting mountains of irrefutable evidence of the previous crimes, scientific evidence of false identity and forged documents, an absolutely clear pattern of predatory behavior, devastating testimony. From mothers and brothers of previous victims, a jury of 7 people deliberated for 4 tense hours, finally came back with a unanimous verdict. Guilty of 3 qualified homicides for a base motive, 2 of them with an appeal that made it difficult to defend the victims. Guilty of ideological falsehood in a high degree, guilty of continued embezzlement, guilty of attempted qualified murder against me. Total sentence applied. 78 years of prison in a closed regime with no possibility of progression to a semi-open regime or reduction of sentence when the judge banged the gavel and read the final sentence. I felt something strange, that it wasn't exactly happy I was triumphant, but it was deep and visceral relief. He would never again be able to do that to another innocent woman. He would never again be able to manipulate, seduce, marry, kill. He would never again be able to destroy lives and families. I left the court with my father physically supporting me because my legs were wobbly, reporters shouting questions, television cameras filming, photographers taking hundreds of photos. I quickly got into the car and finally let out all the tears I had been holding back during the entire trial. I cried profusely for an hour. I cried for myself and for the innocents lost, for the 3 women who didn't have the extraordinary luck that I had, for their completely shattered families who would never get their daughters back, for the love that I genuinely thought I felt and that never really existed, for the trust in men that would never be the same, for the worldview that changed permanently. But I also cried with intense relief because I was alive, because he was trapped forever, because justice had been done. Even though it was late for the others, months gradually turned into years. I continued weekly therapy religiously for 3 full years, then fortnightly sessions for another 2 years. Now I only go once a month for maintenance, but I still need that support. I went back to the law firm gradually. I started working only part-time 3 days a week, then 4 days, then 5 days, but reduced hours. Eventually, I went back to full-time. But I discovered a new passion within the law that I didn't have before, defending victims of domestic violence and crimes against women, using my horrible story to help other women in dangerous situations. I started giving voluntary talks at universities and women's events about signs of abusive relationships, how to identify predatory behavior undercover, the vital importance of checking a partner's background before getting emotionally involved. I have been publicizing background investigation services that are now available online that any woman can hire for affordable prices to check people's criminal records. If I had invested 300 Rs in basic investigation at the time, I would have easily discovered the glaring inconsistencies in his documents. But there is no point. Living forever on what if? Just moving forward, learning, and helping others? I have met dozens of other survivors of near homicides or women who have lost sisters, daughters, friends to extremely similar predators. We formed an organized support group that meets monthly in a room provided by a local church. We are now 17 women with absolutely horrible stories, but all fundamentally strong. All resilient survivors, all refusing to be defined just as victims. Little by little, I slowly returned to a normal social life. I accepted invitations to go out with friends. I had some superficial casual encounters with men, but nothing remotely serious because I was still deeply afraid of trusting. Until 3 full years after the trial, I met Andre in a completely non-romantic situation. He was a judicial expert in of my complicated cases of contentious divorce with property dispute, man of 43 years old, divorced for 7 years, devoted father of 3 children aged 11, 14 and 16 who lived with him every other week, civil engineer, calm and balanced personality, extremely transparent in everything, without any rush. When eventually in a casual conversation, I briefly mentioned my story. Without going into details, he didn't run away, scared or uncomfortable as many previous men had been. He just said, with genuine sincerity, "I'm sorry for what you went through. You must have. It's been absolutely terrible and traumatic. If you want to talk about it at some point, I'm available. If you'd rather never bring it up, that's perfectly fine too. I'm not in any rush for anything. We can go at whatever pace you feel comfortable." And those simple words were exactly what I needed to hear.